Rotation is the control that almost every secret security policy lists and almost no organization fully implements. Policy says, rotate credentials every 90 days. The credentials that are actually rotated on that schedule are a fraction of the total. The credentials that have not been rotated since they were first issued are a larger fraction than anyone on the team could accurately estimate. And somewhere in that gap, between the policy that exists and the rotation that happens, are the credentials an attacker is most interested in finding. This is not a story about organizations ignoring security policy. It is a story about what rotation actually requires in practice and why the requirement is harder to meet than it looks when the policy is written. Rotation sounds simple: generate a new value, replace the old one. The new value is unknown to anyone who found the old one. The exposure window closes, the risk resets. That description is accurate for a secret used in exactly one place, by exactly one system, with exactly one configuration file that needs updating. It describes almost no real secret in almost no real environment. Every secret in a production system has dependents, systems that hold the current value and use it to authenticate, configuration stores where the value is set, deployment pipelines that inject it, documentation, internal wikis, runbooks, onboarding guides, where it may have been noted at some point by someone trying to make someone else's life easier. The moment you rotate a secret, every dependent that has not received the new value becomes a broken service. The broken service generates an incident. The incident generates pressure to restore the old value. The old value is sometimes restored. The rotation is sometimes reversed. This dynamic, rotation causing outages that cause rotation to be undone, is the most common reason rotation policies exist on paper but not in practice. The team that tried to rotate a database credential and brought down 3 services for 40 minutes will take a very different approach to the next scheduled rotation. They will plan it more carefully. They will schedule it for a maintenance window. They will defer it when the maintenance window conflicts with something else. They will defer it again. The credential ages. The rotation that was supposed to happen every 90 days has not happened in 14 months. The dependency problem compounds in microservices environments where the graph of what uses what is not fully documented. An engineer asked to rotate a specific service account credential may not know that a monitoring agent, a backup scheduler, and a legacy integration service also authenticate with that account, because those connections were added at different times by different people and were never centralized in any inventory. The rotation updates the primary service. The monitoring agent starts failing silently. The backup scheduler stops running. The legacy integration throws errors that go unnoticed for a week because nobody is watching that log stream actively. Certificate rotation has its own specific failure mode that differs from credential rotation in one important way. It has a hard deadline. A certificate expires at a specific date and time. The service that depends on it stops working at that moment, not gradually, not partially, completely. Certificate expiry incidents are among the most disruptive single points of failure in production systems because they tend to be invisible until the moment of failure and then immediately total. Microsoft Azure had a major outage in 2019 caused by an expired certificate in a monitoring service. The Spotify certificate expiry in 2017 caused widespread login failures. The pattern repeats because certificate rotation is scheduled based on expiry date and then missed, either because the monitoring that was supposed to warn about approaching expiry was not in place, or because it was in place and the alert went to a team that had changed since the certificate was issued. Automated rotation solves the dependency and scheduling problems for secrets that are stored in a secrets manager and consumed by services that retrieve the current value at runtime. If the service fetches the secret fresh on each use, rather than caching a static copy, the secrets manager can rotate the underlying value without touching any dependent service. The rotation is invisible to the consuming service. There is no coordination window, no maintenance schedule, no risk of bringing down something that did not receive the update. But automated rotation requires that every dependent uses the secrets manager correctly, fetching dynamically, handling rotation gracefully when a cached value is invalidated mid-session, and not holding static copies in configuration files or environment variables that bypass the dynamic retrieval entirely. In most organizations, the migration to fully dynamic secret consumption is incomplete. Some services retrieve dynamically, some hold static copies from 6 months ago. Some are legacy systems that cannot be modified without a project that has not been prioritized. The automated rotation that works perfectly for the services that were built for it breaks the services that were not. The rotation gap, the population of credentials that a rotation policy applies to but that are not actually being rotated, is in most organizations larger than the population that is being rotated. The gap is not uniformly distributed. It clusters around the credentials that are hardest to rotate. Shared credentials used by multiple teams, credentials embedded in systems that are difficult to change, credentials for external services that require manual coordination with a third party to replace, credentials for legacy systems where the person who originally set them up has left the organization and nobody else fully understands the dependencies. Those are precisely the credentials most likely to have been seen by more people, stored in more places, and held for longer. The credentials the rotation policy least successfully reaches are the ones most in need of rotation. Rotation is a sound principle. A credential that changes regularly limits the useful lifetime of any exposure. The gap between the principle and the practice is not closed by better policy. It is closed by reducing the cost of rotation to the point where it happens automatically, without coordination, without outages, and without depending on anyone to remember to do it. Until that gap is closed, the rotation schedule that exists in the policy is not the rotation schedule that applies to the most sensitive credentials in the environment.